Ever since we got that trailer which announced that we were getting a sequel to Breath of the Wild, I've been wondering something. How exactly will the sequel connect to the first? Now, I don't mean in terms of where it will pick up in the story in the game. I mean literally, as in on our system, how will it connect? Do you have to have the first on your Switch in order to play the second? If you can somehow link, pun totally intended, the first to its sequel on your system, will certain elements be modified based on what you've completed or not completed in the base game? How will all of this work? Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and no, I do not normally wear this much eye makeup. Blech. I have a dance performance later today and I needed to go ahead and have that ready. Anyway, moving on, I am so excited to talk about Breath of the Wild 2, as I will shorten it for this video yet again. The last time I did, it was in a video with Hyrule Gamer, which you can click here to see, a video which apparently got featured, that might be too strong of a word, put in an article by Zelda Dungeon and then shared by Zelda Informer. That's pretty cool. So click the card if you want to see it, or check the description. I'll have the article too down in the description. So, how will the first game, specifically how you played or didn't play it, influence the sequel? Well, let's speculate. Although I imagine the number of people going into playing the sequel without having first played the original will be minuscule, there will be some nonetheless. For example, let's say someone bought Breath of the Wild for their Wii U because they couldn't afford a Switch at the time, but now they can, or for the sake of the sequel, will make sure they can. Well, why would they purchase Breath of the Wild again? I mean, I did, but not everyone's gonna do that, so they wouldn't have a playthrough on their Switch ready at hand. What happens in this case? If the games can be linked on your Switch, most likely in this case, it would just begin the sequel as if you had a fully done playthrough on your Switch already. Or at the very least would begin as if you got all of the story elements from the first game, so not exactly the side quests, Korok Seeds, Hyrule Compendium, etc. Note again, this is assuming there is a way to connect them on your system. There could also exist the possibility that you cannot begin the sequel until you have done a certain amount in the first, or at least have the first in your system, but I highly doubt this being a thing. Alright, as I've already established, most people purchasing the sequel will already have at least one playthrough of the first on their Switch, if not their Wii U. A big part of Breath of the Wild's beauty was its freedom. As soon as you finished the Great Plateau, you could skip the entire story and go straight to Calamity Ganon if you wanted to, and then game over, you're done. But if the sequel can be linked on your system to your save file from the first game, will the story be influenced by your original playthrough? If so, this could lead to a few very interesting changes in everyone's experience of the game. Imagine starting up the sequel with the save file from the first that it's linked to having none of the story elements completed. What would happen then? Maybe that would leave you at a disadvantage in some way, making the game a little bit more challenging. Or maybe it will modify some of the cutscenes in the sequel based on which, if any, of the memories you have. I will admit, memories alone opens up a lot of possibilities, and thus I can't imagine the entirety of the first game influencing the sequel, such as which shrines you've done, how many side quests you've completed, or even whether or not you have the DLC. That last one does bring up certain questions concerning the Master Sword in the sequel, depending on whether you've done the trials or not. Also, the Divine Beasts become a problem too. What if you only did one or two of them? Are the others still possessed? Well, not if you destroyed Calamity Ganon, but what if you're like me and you still haven't done that because you just have this weird fear of final bosses? Don't know what that's about. What then? Would the sequel then jump to default mode, if you will, as if you had completed all of that? As you can probably tell, there are honestly too many variables to consider when trying to make the second game be influenced by your playthrough in the first game. So much so that I'm kind of leaning toward the idea that Nintendo won't be doing this. Though it would be cool, and it sometimes seems like it should be necessary given that it's a direct sequel, more so than Majora's Mask was. So now, after speculating about those various possibilities as if Nintendo were going to have a way for you to link your save file from the first game to the sequel, we have to ask this question. What if they don't link up at all? You know, the most likely scenario. Obviously they're connected at least story-wise because it's a direct sequel. We've been over that. But what if there's no way to connect your playthroughs? No way to let what you did or didn't do in the first game influence the second? Most likely the answer to this is what would happen if you could connect them but didn't even have the first game. That default mode I mentioned. Breath of the Wild 2 begins assuming you have all of the memories and did everything in the first. Although, like I said, maybe not completionist level of completion, but just enough to start the sequel. You know, like gaining control of the Divine Beast, defeating Calamity Ganon, and maybe certain story elements. Either way, it's something to ponder and consider as we await further news on this most anticipated sequel. Because there wasn't anything at the Game Awards. Oh well, maybe there will be a February Direct like there was for this year. That would be great, and that'll probably be when we get more Animal Crossing news. Whatever Nintendo decides to do concerning linking the files or just not giving us information for a while, I'll let them do what they need to do because I want this sequel to turn out great, as we all do, and I think most of us are willing to wait to get a very, very good game. What are your thoughts? Do you think that there could be a way to link the save files from your first playthrough to the sequel? If so, what kind of influence do you think it'll have over everyone's individual playthrough? A change in story? A difference in game mechanics? If you don't think this will happen, then why not? Is it unnecessary? Too complicated? Let me know either way in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this, maybe consider watching these other videos of mine and seeing if you would like to subscribe if you haven't already. I tend to put out about 2 videos a week and stream as often as I can. It's a good time. But anyway, that's all for today. Merry Christmas and thank you for watching.